Number 3. The one-man hide-and-seek, aka the one-man tag, is a ritual for contacting the dead. The spirits, which are wandering restless on the earth, are always looking for bodies to possess. In this ritual, you will summon such a spirit by offering it a doll instead of a human body. Warning: this is an extremely dangerous ritual. I advise you not to try it. Here's my experience. I followed the instructions thoroughly, cutting the teddy I had chosen up, taking out the stuffing, and filling it with uncooked white rice. I then put my toenail clippings in. I'm growing out my fingernails, so I didn't want to cut them, before sewing the doll, or teddy, closed with a red thread. I then tied up the doll with the rest of the thread. I probably should tell you by now that I was all alone at home, and that I live in an apartment. I took the doll with me to the bathroom, and proceeded to fill the bathtub up with water. Leaving the doll behind, I went to the kitchen, and filled a glass with table salt. I took the salt to where I was planning on hiding, a closet in my brother's room, and left it there before returning to the doll. I told it, "Your name is Maria," and then I left and went on my phone for a couple of hours, until I saw it was nearly 3 a.m. At 3 a.m., I went to the bathroom with a pretty sharp kitchen knife and lifted the doll, saying, "Maria is the first it." And then I put the doll in the bathtub. I took the knife with me to the kitchen, where I made myself a glass of salt water. Then I went around the house, switching all the lights off, as well as turned the TV in the living room to static. I went into the closet I was planning on hiding in, bringing my salt water with me, and closed my eyes before I counted to 10. I'll have you know, I was really fucking scared at this point, but I wanted to go through with it, since I didn't really think it would work. After counting, I returned to the bathroom, knife in hand, and said to the doll, "I have found you, Maria." Then, I stabbed the doll, before saying, "Now, Maria is it," 3 times. I left the knife behind, along with the doll, and ran back to my hiding place. My heart was beating really fast, and I was praying to God this wouldn't actually work. I didn't know how long I had been in there. It couldn't have been more than a couple of minutes, when I heard weird sounds coming from the television. The channels were changing on their own, perfectly timed to create the sentence, "I am coming now." My stomach dropped, and I felt sick. There was no way to explain to you how much this terrified me. I filled my mouth with salt water just in case. Then, I heard pattering from the hallway. I started regretting ever playing this, and I was literally shaking in horror. All the while, the pattering was moving around from room to room. I think this was when I started tearing up. I was freaking out and too scared to leave the closet. What happened next could have been just my imagination, but I could swear that I started smelling rotten wood around me, as if the walls of the closet were rotten. I was so freaking out badly, and it scared me more. The channel started flipping like crazy, once again creating sentences. "Where are you? I'm coming closer." I cried, and decided it was time to end this. I shakily got out of the closet, almost too scared to move, and started looking around the house for the doll. I found it outside the kitchen, which was very close to where I was hiding. I spat the salt water I had miraculously managed to keep in my mouth on the doll. But then I realized I had forgotten the rest of the water in the cup. So I ran back to the closet, got the cup, and got back to the doll, before pouring it all over it. My lips were quivering as I said, "I win," over and over again. Then, when I went to cut the thread, I didn't have my knife, so I just ripped it open with my hands. I dried and burned the doll afterwards, but I still don't know where the knife is. This game has me so paranoid. I can barely live in my house anymore. And I swear, I can hear the patter of the doll's feet some nights. Please, don't ever play this. Number 2. A friend of mine, Frank, had always been a fan of the supernatural. Ghouls, possession, summoning of spirits, you name it, he knows it. I know of him through the army, and as we share quite a common interest, we became chat buddies, as we would discuss things about the supernatural. I, however, am not as deeply intrigued as he is, and I just held a curious attitude about it. But a discussion with him is always very interesting, as he really knows in depth about it. I had sometimes questioned where his knowledge came from, and he would cite his uncle, Mr. Alcott, who is a deep and profound man that we had met once when our whole bunch of army buddies went over to his house for a gathering. Frank lived alone, and his uncle comes over to visit him frequently. Coming from a broken family, where his mother had abandoned him, and soon after, his father passed away, but left him with the house and quite a sum of inheritance, Mr. Alcott doted on him deeply, maybe because he wanted to make it up to him. Now, Mr. Alcott dabbled in the supernatural as well, but more deeply than Frank. He would be of a professional standard, if you were to ask me. Frank had told us before of how his uncle is able to perform exorcisms and stuff, but his uncle would just laugh it off when we asked him about it during the gathering. Frank had played with the Ouija board and a number of spiritual contacting games before, after seeking instructions from his uncle, and had safely returned from the games. This time, however, he overstepped that boundary. One night, I received a distress call from Frank at about 12 p.m. in the night. I was genuinely shocked from his tone. God, he was terrified, and was whispering and muttering that something is out to catch him. And he's scared, begging for me to save him, and he can't contact his uncle. I assured him I'd be coming over, and after calling up a couple of our buddies, we drove to his house. He lived in quite a rural place, in a large 2-story house. Lex, Alden, and I knocked on his door, and a shaken Frank opened it. And as we got into his house, he told us what happened. Apparently, he stumbled upon a supernatural game of playing hide-and-seek with yourself a few days back online. He was quite bored and decided to give it a try. Now, here are some steps of the game, but I left out some of the details. 1. A doll, to be put in the corner of the house after doing some ritual to it that involves blood and some stuff. 2. Then, go to somewhere in the house and count to 10. After that, go back to the doll's position and tell it that you found it. And now, it is its turn to find you. 3. After which, you should hide and wait for it to find you. Switch off all the lights, as it cannot move in the presence of lights. 4. Hide for an hour. The doll is supposed to be looking for you. 4. Hide for an hour. The doll is supposedly now looking for you. 5. Do not leave the house. It will mean that you lost. 6. After an hour, go back to the doll's original position and tell it that it lost. That would end the game, and the doll would supposedly have moved from its spot by the time you got back to it, proving the supernatural to thrill seekers online. Apparently, Frank found it funny and bought a Barbie for this game. After doing the first 3 steps, he hid in his closet and thought to himself what would happen, and treated it like it was a joke, like a prank or something, a bogus ritual posted online. But he was wrong. He heard rumbling noises on the 2nd floor, like someone ransacking the room they'd left the Barbie in. Then, the door he closed that led to the doll slammed open, and he heard footsteps along the corridor. It walked past his room. He hid in the 2nd floor, in his bedroom, and went downstairs into the kitchen. An hour passed, and he was amazed by the results. He went back into the room where he placed the Barbie, and this is where things went wrong. The Barbie was nowhere in sight. He couldn't find it anywhere he looked. However, he could always see something in the darkness after he switched off his lights. And did I mention his kitchen knife was missing? The three of us were spooked. He had turned on all the lights in his house and held a broomstick in his living room while waiting for us to arrive. Finally, we decided to contact his uncle, and he was angry that Frank had been so stupid to do such things without consulting him first, as apparently the online ritual had not been fully detailed. Firstly, the bet that the player had made was his life, due to adding the blood to the doll, and the doll would kill him when the doll finds him. And the game would not end unless the blood player found the doll and told the doll it lost, which would end the game, and the spirit would leave. His uncle was still in the neighboring country and would not be able to rush back till tomorrow morning. But the rule of it not being able to move in the light was uncertain, so his uncle told us to stick with Frank and, meanwhile, search for the doll. A certain rule was that the doll could not harm anyone other than Frank due to the blood bond, so we could safely search for it. Or we could wait for his uncle to arrive next morning to forcefully banish the spirit. So now, we armed ourselves with sticks and sat in the middle of the empty living room. We had moved most furniture away for better vision. And Alden went to search for the doll with a baseball bat and a pail to capture it. That was 15 minutes ago. We haven't heard from Alden since. Update. I forgot to post this after I reached home the next day. I was so tired that I fell asleep. Sorry for making you guys wait. We are safe and sound, as Alden had managed to trap that doll under his pail in Frank's bedroom on the second floor. But it was extremely strong. Alden had to keep pressing down on the pail and couldn't come back to inform us. He had suffered some slashes on his arm, but somehow had managed to knock the knife off the doll before trapping it in the pail. He forgot his cell phone, and as it was quite far, we couldn't hear his shouts. Lex, who had been looking for him, came running down to us after I submitted the page, and we all went up together, and God forbid, that last rule is fake, as no matter how Frank shouted at it that it had lost and go back, the doll continued to bang the pail, trying to break out. You can't imagine the look on our faces, but Alden, being the smartest, instructed us to bring more pails, so we could just kind of stack them on it, and took turns to sit on it until morning. His uncle had arrived around 8:30 a.m. with luggage and all as he rushed here straight from the airport. Upon his entrance to the room, the knockings on the pail suddenly stopped. It's like he was afraid of Frank's uncle. He instructed us to leave the room and lock the door. And after a good 45 minutes, he came out holding the lifeless doll in his hand and brought it outside the house. That's where he burned it, watching it closely until it burned into nothing but ashes. After that ordeal, we all went home to sleep, and his uncle thanked us for coming over. Frank was given an earful, of course. And that's it, people. As a warning to everyone, do not trust everything on the internet. And do not dabble in the supernatural, regardless of how good you think you are. It is not something that is within our control. And we got lucky this time. Number 1. Hi, I'm a 15-year-old atheist, and yesterday night I tried something that I really shouldn't have thought about doing. I tried playing hide-and-seek alone. For those of you wondering what it is, it's some sort of spirit ritual that is practiced in most Asian countries. I read about it from the Creepypasta website. Since I don't believe in ghosts, I decided to give this thing a try. My parents were away, and my babysitter had to leave at 12 p.m. Now, I've tried a couple of rituals with my friends before. We did the Midnight Man and Bloody Mary. We burst out laughing after we did Bloody Mary, because we called her things like, "Come out, you stupid bitch!" As the crazy and fearless teen I am, I wanted to know what it was like to do a ritual all alone. So I found a really old doll with legs, just like the ritual requires, bought some rice from the supermarket, and got the rest of the requirements. I got the cotton out of the doll, filled it up with rice, put some of my hair in, then tied it up with red thread. As a weapon, I decided to go for a pencil, since you never can be too sure, and since I was worried that my parents would kill me if they saw that half a vodka bottle was missing, I decided to buy some salt water. As for the name, I named the little guy Crustio. This is how I used to call a friend of mine before he got fairly irritated and punched me in the face. After the clock hit 3:02, I said, "First tagger is Crustio," 3 times, trying really hard not to laugh. I put the doll in the wash basin, turned off all the lights, lit some candles, since it wasn't specifically forbidden, and counted to 10. After, I grabbed my number 2 pencil, and I went to the bathroom. And that's when I found the doll, really strangely. Its eyes were almost flashing, but I thought it was because of the candles, and ignored it. I almost felt bad about stabbing it. Now, it was the doll's turn to find me. I hid in my closet and waited 5 minutes. I was getting bored and finally got out. I drank the salt water, but didn't swallow it, and I went to the bathroom to end the game. However, the doll wasn't there. I ran silently to the kitchen, since my house wasn't that big. And that's when I saw the doll, walking around the stove and turning its head every second. He wasn't holding the pencil, but he was holding a razor edge. I jumped at the doll, spat the water over it, and dumped the leftover salt water on it. I yelled, "I win! I win! I win!" It didn't fight back, it just hit the floor. I ran into the yard, got some old papers and matches, and then burned the doll. I was relieved to see that my neighbors were still awake. Their bedroom lights were on, and the owner of the house even showed his head and yelled, "What the fuck are you doing? Are you trying to start a fire? Oh, you little shit. Wait till your parents hear about this." Oh, he sounded really pissed, but I didn't pay much attention to him. I just ran to the house and spread salt over every corner in the house. 2 whole salt containers worth. Oh, I was scared and confused. I didn't know what to think. I decided that the TV would cheer me up, so I turned it on. And the channel I normally watched was now static. I found it really weird, since all the other channels were perfectly fine. And then it turned to black, and I heard the following words. Now, they won't leave my head. They said, "You didn't win shit." The lights started flickering on and off, and the doors sounded like they were being opened and closed over and over again. Well, I saw clearly that they didn't move. I didn't think for a second and ran towards my friend's house close by. He didn't ask me what was going on, but just let me in. I told him exactly what happened, and his response was, "You've just summoned a demon. Look, after you get some sleep, call a priest immediately before your relatives are in danger." The next morning, I saw my babysitter with a really astonished look on her face. The neighbors told me you were burning something in the garden. I saw the paper leftovers. What exactly were you burning? I won't tell your parents this, okay? So don't worry. I burned a doll. I was bored and decided to burn something with my friends. My voice was so shaky I could see she didn't believe a thing. I saw a doll in the cupboard. I don't understand why you'd burn something and then put it back on the shelf. I walked slowly to my room, and I saw the burned doll, clear as day, next to my computer monitor. I panicked, grabbed it, and threw it away in the trash. The priest should be here any moment now, but I'm still worried that this thing could harm my family. All I can do now is wait. Update. Yesterday morning, I woke up with a cut mark. It doesn't seem that big, but it does resemble the one of a razor edge. I tried to explain this to myself a couple of different ways. Either I cut myself while I was holding the doll, or, just like the ritual said, it's normal to wake up with cut marks after you did it. Otherwise, I think the priest did a very good job. There hasn't been anything weird going on. I know I should stop repeating that. And my parents recently came back from their business trip. Now, this update is going to be a little short, since there's not much to say. Other than that, I had a really strange dream. I dreamt that I was at my grandpa's house and we talked. He died 8 years ago by lung cancer. The talking was pretty much what was happening throughout the whole dream. However, there were 3 lines I had to write on paper after I woke up. The first one was said by my grandpa. "Why did you stab me in the heart?" The second one was asked by me. "Why were you trying to harm me?" The third one was his answer. "Because I wanted you to feel the same pain as I did." This is where the dream ended. I was left in tears after I thought about it. Did I really summon my grandpa into the body of that doll? But that doesn't make any sense. Why would my grandpa want to harm me? He always spent time with me when I was little. But, thinking about it, I haven't visited his grave in over 3 years.